smell of burnt yellow corn. A blue shirt is light winter.
Pip pip tally ho, Joolz Guides here, in which I wander around London and tell you fascinating facts which you may or may not know, or may not care about, actually, especially since I've got a terrible cold and I'm suffering. Today, I am on the shore of the River Thames. Sometimes you see these funny people scavenging in the pebbles, but don't forget, you need a licence. You're not allowed just to sort of come down here. If you find something good, it belongs in a museum. So do you, Dr. Jones.
Another glass of wine, waiting for some friends of mine.
You got a licence?
I've got a licence.
She has got a licence.
I'm a mudlark and I look for historical artefacts that we find in the mud. Anything we find over 300 years, we take to the Museum of London to be recorded on the Portable Antiquities scheme. And we find all sorts of wonderful, exciting things that have actually changed the way we see history today. You have to get a licence from Portable London Authority. It's very useful. It tells you everything you need to know about the tides, a load of maps that tells you where you can go, where you can't go. But everyone comes down to the river, they find pipe bowls. Normally you find...
Even I found a pipe.
This one's Buffalo Bill.
Oh, is he?
He's pretty cool. This was made for the British tour that Buffalo Bill did in, I think, 1887. A Buffalo Bill pipe was your tourist souvenir that you bring home from it.
He's so cool. Check him out, man.
This one is one of my other favourites. It's Dragon Claw, look.
Well, maybe that fell off when those Death Eaters came and attacked the Millennium Bridge or something.
Monica found one that was a good 200 or 300 years old, brought it home, cleaned it up, and I was the first person to smoke it for about 250 years. So it's
Wow.
quite cool.
How was it? Did it taste of seaweed?
I'm not a smoker, so it wasn't great.
People like to say how long their pipes are that they found.
Mine's longer than yours.
I found one about that big.
I was down here with my friend as well, and we were doing it, and he's only got one arm, and he said I found one which is that big.
Anna is looking gorgeous in a red top, whilst Monica is this season's collection, knee pads and fanny pack, or bum bag in English. What's this thing over here that kind of leads down to the river?
Before we had all these lovely bridges, we had little boats that used to go from one side to the other, wellies they were called. They would gather in their little boats all the way along these jetties, plying for trade.
In fact, in the time of Shakespeare, there'd have been 2,000 water ferrymen along here, and they were a very powerful lobby. I believe they were the reason why London Bridge was the only bridge across the Thames for over 600 years, because these guys wouldn't let them build a new one. Eventually, the king had to pay them off when the Westminster Bridge was opened in 1750.
Rose farthings, because if you look at them, they've got a lovely little rose on them. Between 1637 and 1644, it would have taken about 6 of these to pay for a crossing on a little wherry.
Monica is about to show you a brilliant find, sort of a find of the year find.
You're such a nerd. The two of you are so nerdy, but it's great.
I've become a nerd, that is true. I've transformed into a nerd.
So this is the Saxon penny, King Burgred of Mercia. It's made by this chap called Dudasil. So he was the moneyer who made the coin. Dudasil.
He was the dude.
He was the dude. I have a coin minted by the dude, which I love.
Steve was saying that the other side of the river there is really strict.
Yes, you are not allowed to mudlark over there. That's an absolute no-no. Only full mudlarks allowed down there. Full mudlarks, yeah. There are only 52 full mudlarks in the world, and they have a very special permit that lets them go to areas that we aren't allowed to access.
Hiya, I've watched your YouTube.
Ah, you see, and now you're going to be in one. Oh, excellent. Oh, thanks very much. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
So behind us is the Golden Hind, which I have spoken about in one of my other videos. This was Sir Francis Drake's ship, wasn't it? He was the one, he circumnavigated the globe in this, and it's actually called the Golden Hind because the person who did officially sponsor Sir Francis Drake was a fellow called Sir Christopher Hatton. And Sir Christopher Hatton's family crest, his coat of arms, was a Golden Hind, which is a kind of red female deer. And he was unofficially backed by Queen Elizabeth I. Sir Francis Drake was encouraged by Queen Elizabeth to pillage, yeah, basically.
So he would steal stuff and hide it on a ship. So the ship would be quite heavily armed. They'd have cannon down the side, which would fire big fat cannonball, and on the very, very front of the ship they would have little falconet cannons, and these are found down on the foreshore, little falconet cannonballs.
How about that? Look.
So, a musket ball, that's a grape shot, that's a falconet cannonball.
That is what killed Nelson at Trafalgar, isn't it? So one of these.
And if it hits a human,
It sort of wallops him in the shoulder, doesn't it?
Through the woods, taking off your
St
clothes.
Olaf's house is interesting. King Olaf of Norway, he was the bloke who sailed up the Thames with Ethelred the Unready. He tied ropes around the supports of the bridge and then sailed off and pulled it down, giving birth to the song London Bridge is Falling Down, in order to regain London off of, that's bad English, of Sweyn Forkbeard, you know, son of Harold Bluetooth and husband of Sigrid the Haughty. I think that's who he is. Someone will tell me.
I want to stay in a free, peaceful place. So it's terrible when you
This is the Anchor Pump, by the way. The Anchor Pump, which is the oldest pump along this stretch of the water, along the Anchor. But this is one where Samuel Pepys sat and he watched London burn. He had his cheese buried, didn't he?
He did, he buried his parmesan, very expensive parmesan in those days, and it survived, apparently. So.
Now, why have you stopped us here? Because all I know about it other than that is that it's also where Tom Cruise has a pint at the end of Mission Impossible.
He does.
It's upstairs. Well, you've got something here.
Well, Samuel Pepys used to have his hair covered under a lovely old wig, and the wig would have used these little wig colours.
See that? How do you know that that's what that is? That looks like a kind of. Are you sure that's not a lilette, or what they would call them? What are they called? The
Ladies.
Speaking of cannons, by the way, and I've talked about this before, this actually is a real cannon. These bollards are real cannons. I don't know where it came from. Probably Spanish or French or something. But I don't think your cannonballs. This is a cannon. Oh, it's quite heavy. That.
Quite hefty, isn't it? Yeah.
It's not big enough. Just opposite this cannon is the Vintners Hall. That is the reason the Worshipful Company of Vintners are allowed to cheer 5 times for the monarch. We all remember on the Queen's birthday, Prince Charles said 3 cheers for the Queen, didn't he? And everyone made fun of him because he said hip, 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 hooray. Because we just do hip, hip, hooray, don't we? But Prince Charles says hip, 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 hooray. And everyone laughed at him.
However, had he been toasting the Queen here at Vintners Hall, Vintners are wine merchants, it would have been 5 cheers for the Queen, which dates back to the Feast of 5 Kings held here in 1363, when the Lord Mayor hosted Edward III and the kings of Cyprus, France, Scotland and Denmark.
Not all the swans along here belong to the Queen. Some of them belong to the vintners, yeah. When they count them, they put 2 nicks on their beak. So if you see 2 little kind of marks on their beak, every year they count the swans.
An exciting melody breaks the silence of the TV.
This is a Tudor finial from a money pot or a money box, and they were used to collect the money in the theatres that were over on this side.
At the Globe, for example?
Absolutely. And then after the performance, they would smash the money boxes to get the money out. And then I presume they just threw the pieces in the river.
Maybe that's why they call it a box office smash.
I think you're absolutely
Say this is 1760.
Do you think so?
Roughly, what do you reckon?
It's got
late
some
18th
mill
century.
there.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Back in Shakespeare's time, that whole stretch would have been full of bear baiting pits and brothels known as stews and things like that.
It was an arm's throw from a pub. I can't help but feel that the last person who used it, a night of passion with a lady of the night, has left him with a dose of something rather unpleasant, and he's had to use this to inject mercury in order to cure syphilis. So it's
I don't really want to touch it.
it's had a good 300 years in the Thames to wash it clean.
So you take that bit down the old chap there, and then
And the
through
plunger
here,
would you plunge
some sort
down.
of
Yep.
syringe to administer mercury.
Yeah.
Down
Probably
the old
salt. I
fella.
reckon salt's mercury, and
It's going to sting a bit.
that was literally an arm's throw from a pub.
Between touching this man's member and then touching your hand, no one has been in contact with that.
I normally wear gloves.
So 300 years, you say?
Yeah, they found similar on, was it Captain Kidd's pirate ship? Was it Captain Kidd's pirate ship? There was a ship that was sunk near Bermuda, and they found the doctor's medical bag on there, and there's an identical one in a doctor's medical bag. So it dates contemporary
Well,
time
those
period.
pirates, you know, they were up to all sorts.
They were up to all sorts.
Have you ever read Sodomy and the Pirate Tradition? They're very, honestly,
I can't say it's on my bookshelf now.
it is on my bookshelf. Sodomy and the Pirate
Jules,
Tradition.
that doesn't surprise me.
The sing the likely salvation to the memory.
Gotta be really careful, that wave almost caught me there.
We're running out of time to get up the stairs. Before long, there won't be these two. We better warn them.
Well, you better have.
They're going to be stuck.
Some of the people down here, they end up thinking they're very smart coming to look for stuff, and then the tide comes in, and then they get stuck, and you have to call a police boat to come and get you, and it's all very undignified. It's not a good look.
In about 6 hours' time, the water will be up to there. So basically, you have to know your tides, you have to know when to come down, and you shouldn't come down if you don't know where your nearest escape route is, because the water can come in and cut you off, and then you're left with one of these. And not all of them are as strong as they look. In fact, that one doesn't even look very strong at all.
They are only for use in emergencies if you get cut off by the tide, because not all of them are safe.
Okay, yes, people do have accidents on them, don't they?
They're only really an escape route.
Make sure you take the stairs out before the tide comes in.
Look at that. Yeah, no, I'm not going to try this one.
All these oyster shells are so interesting. There are millions of them because oysters were the diet from the Romans up to the 1920s. Everybody was eating them, and they were the diet of Londoners, for the poor, for years and years and years, for thousands of
Oysters were what poor people ate.
years. Yeah, poor people ate them in the
Oh,
Victorian
they're pretty expensive these days, aren't they?
It's like eating a bowl of snot, if you ask me. It's disgusting.
Isn't that the oldest wharf in London? Can't see it from here.
You mean Queen Hive? Yeah,
Yes.
that's the oldest dock in London. I think it was Anglo-Saxon, I'm not sure.
In the year 886, London was reoccupied by Alfred the Great, who established the first harbour here, and it was later named Queen's Hive after Queen Matilda, wife of Henry I.
There's this wonderful mural giving some information. Hadrian, Romans conquer Britain, bubonic plague, Viking raids, big bowl of porridge.
Played until the end, played until the end. Girls dance with coloured dress, all together.
The night comes on and the bleak winds do sorely ruffle. For miles about there's scarce a bush. But over there is St Thomas's Hospital and the Lambeth Palace, the London seat of the Archbishop of Canterbury. You would know all this if you watched my film about this area, Vauxhall and all that sort of stuff.
Now this is Tudor, probably about 1500s. It's made of bone, and it would be used to clean your ears out. You get your lump of earwax and you use it on the end of a bit of thread to make the ends unfrayed. It's dual purpose, so one, you clean your ears, two, you can use it to thread your clothes.
I had this saxophone teacher and he used to use goose grease to moisturise the end of the mouthpiece. He had a big bulbous blue nose and he used this reek of whiskey. And he was there once and he just went, I've run out of goose fat. Hang on a sec. And he just went like this and then smeared it around the edge of his mouthpiece and put his saxophone thing on.
Got here a little door knocker. Now he's based on a Medici door knocker, which would be from Florence, sort of 1800s, 1800s.
I like him, he's excellent.
He would have come off one of the bomb sites in London when one of the Georgian houses was blown up in World War II. And I think he scares off evil spirits and only welcomes the good people into your house.
Oh, I like him. How much is it worth? How old is it? Come on, get to the point.
It's priceless to me. It's priceless to me. Most of the stuff we find is not worth money. And this is Wedgwood. I mean, come on, it's got Cupid on it.
Oh, is it Cupid?
It's Cupid.
It's not a cherubim or a seraphim. A seraphim has 6 wings and is constantly praising the Lord and are the highest ranked of the angels.
Oh.
According to Thomas Aquinas, that is. I don't mean Arnold Schwarzenegger. What's that film, the Arnold Schwarzenegger film where he plays Thomas Aquinas? My name is Thomas Aquinas. Cherubim have 4 faces.
Yeah.
One of a man, a fox, an eagle, and have 4 wings. And they're the second most highly ranked angels.
Over there is MI6, as you would know if you've watched my videos before. And opposite MI6 is Tate Britain, not to be confused with Tate Modern. Sir Henry Tate, who made a lot of money off the back of sugar that he imported from West Indies and stuff, got knighted and donated all these paintings, and they started up the Tate Gallery. That's why you see on a bag of sugar, it's Tate and Lyle. So,
Knighted for making lots of money out of slavery, essentially.
that is basically how he made his millions, isn't it? Yeah, out of slavery. Before it was the Tate Gallery, this was Millbank Penitentiary, where you would have been kept before being transported to Australia. Excuse me while I whip this out.
You'd be given a bowl of these hard lumps of sugar, and you'd use this to crush it in your hot coffee.
Yeah.
And then you'd use that end to stir it. And these are, I just think these are so pretty. And they're all handmade, and apparently they were given to glassmakers' apprentices to learn their trade. So
How old is it?
Well, this would be basically probably Georgian to early Victorian, this one.
Okay.
So this, however, is a gentleman's penknife.
Oh, this is more like my type of thing. This
Very,
is for
very
the
beautiful.
discerning gentleman.
This is actually a penknife. It would have been used to sharpen quills. Okay, that knife is about 1720 because the Rococo style.
You're so funny. She always leaves out the most amazing stuff from it. The fact that that's from 1720 is fascinating. And she's just harping on about all this Rococo stuff. What's Rococo anyway? Never tried it, Mr. Faulty.
The prison cells just happened to be underneath, but the pub was built specifically for the guards, and then
the guards just come and have a cheeky pint.
Yeah, while they're working, you know. The word POM that Australians call English people actually stands for prisoners of Millbank.
Some people say prisoner of Mother England.
But we've also been told that it's prisoners of Millbank.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy my films, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you want a private guided tour of London, you can head over to my website, joolzguides.com, where you can find out more about me and even leave a generous donation on PayPal or Patreon, whatever that is, or get in touch on the contact form. If you want to find out more about mudlarking, you can go over to the Facebook page in the description below, or Monica's Instagram page, Mudika Thames. But remember, you do need a license, a permit, and if you find stuff older than 300 years old, it belongs in a museum. Cheers, Monica. Thanks very much. Cheers, everybody. Cheers, Steve. See you next time.